Alright, what's up everybody? I want to do the overview of Thief from the specialization changes. As a general overall, I think it's a net gain for the Thief. The Thief's going to get a lot more group utility and a lot more personal DPS, so those are both really good things. For PvE anyway, the build variety is going to be lessened a little bit, and there's a couple losses that time will tell how those work out to be. But for the most part, it's a pretty big win for Thief. So I will, without further ado, get into it, and we'll start with Deadly Arts. So Deadly Arts was reworked a little bit in order to make Condi builds sort of more effective. It has a very strong poison theme, but overall, it's still a very good line for PvE direct damage. I'm looking at the minor traits: Serpent's Touch, Stealing inflicts poison. Pretty lengthy poison, 10.5 seconds. That's not nothing. So that's a decent trait. Lotus Poison, that hasn't changed. And Exposed Weakness, deal more damage if target has a condition 10%. We're always big fans of percent damage increases. So at the Adept level, we have Dagger Training. Dagger damage is increased to poison foes. Now this is a pretty interesting change. Previously it was just a straight 5% damage increase while wielding a dagger, but now they've made it conditional upon the foe being poisoned. So in theory, you won't have 100% uptime of this, but I think with Serpent's Touch and the dagger auto attacks, this will work out to be pretty much 100%. Although I did note in the live stream, they did say that the functionality of this trait is going to change. So they said that they're going to roll the 5% damage increase into the base coefficients of all the skills. So basically every dagger skill on your bar is going to get buffed by 5%, and that this trait is going to have some other kind of functionality. We'll see what it is. But just pretending that this is the final product, will obviously be big fans of dagger training. Mug hasn't changed. It's a very good PvP skill. And Trapper's Respite. Drop a needle trap when you use a healing skill. This is going to be pretty interesting in PvP, or I should say more likely in World v World. But it's hard to imagine that Mug is going to be put aside so that someone can bring this needle trap. But I could see a Condi build for sure taking needle trap instead of Mug. That makes a lot of sense to me. So it seems like we have a nice blend here, but we got a PvE trait, a PvP trait, and then like a Condi build PvP trait. Master level, Resourceful Trapper. Stealing reduces the cooldown of currently recharging traps. Pretty strong trap theme. Obviously not something that we're going to care about in PvE. Panic Strike. Striking a foe that is below the health threshold immobilizes them. 20-second cooldown. Panic Strike was a Grandmaster trait. Moved to Master. This is a big change for PvP. PvPers went all the way into Deadly Arts for Panic Strike. So now getting it at the Master level is a pretty big gain for them. However, in PvE, the big thing is Revealed Training. Revealed Training will be most likely... That was also a Grandmaster trait. And so now we can get that at the Master level. Makes Revealed Training really strong. And Grandmaster, Potent Poison. It's like a new trait that buffs poison damage. Again, I could see that being a big thing in a Condi build. Or even just PvP for outlasting people with like Dagger Pistol. Improvisation, they change the functionality. You can use stolen items twice. One random skill category is immediately recharged when you steal. The skill recharge thing isn't really that big of a deal, but using stolen items twice is pretty cool. And they said they're going to, because of this trait, they're going to have to massively rework all those. We'll see how they change. For PvE, that's not a huge deal. PvP, it could be. And then Grandmaster, the PvE trait of choice is Executioner, 20% damage increase over or under 50% health. This is a really good trait, and it's not hard to see that we will continue to take this in PvE. All right, so that... actually, and I should mention that was in Critical Strikes and moved to Deadly Arts. So with Revealed Training and Executioner now in the same line, they sort of centralized a lot of the DPS skills in Deadly Arts so that you're not... in theory, forced to take both Critical Strikes and Deadly Arts in a PvE build. Although, as we'll see, it's most likely probably the best idea to do both anyway. But in theory, you don't have to take both now. So this is definitely opening up a little bit of build variety for the Thief in PvE. Alright, so moving on. Alright, Critical Strikes. This was always a very popular trait line in PvE for the Thief because it gave precision, it gave crit damage, and it had really good DPS boosting traits. We'll see where we're at now. Minor traits, we have Keen Observer, critical hit chance increased while your health is above the threshold. This has always been that way, and will stay that way. New trait, Unrelenting Strikes, critical hit damage is increased against foes whose health is below the threshold, 33%, and it gives you Might when you hit them below that health threshold on a 1-second internal cooldown. The Might is somewhat negligible, but the extra critical hit damage is pretty strong. It sort of functions similarly to Executioners, so once someone's health dips low, it's easier to bring them down. And then First Strike's critical hit damage is increased while your current initiative is over the threshold. It says critical damage, but it just says damage increased 10%. I imagine it's not going to be critical damage. I imagine it is going to be that 10% DPS flat boost. And as we'll see with some of the other changes to the Trickery line, keeping First Strikes up is going to be relatively easy to do. So I would definitely expect First Strikes to be even better than it already is. Adept, Side Strike, 7% critical chance increase while flanking. That's always been that way, and it's a great trait. Signets of Power, gain Might when activating a Signet. Signet cooldown is reduced. They buffed it to 5 stacks of Might. I still don't think that anyone would take that over Side Strike in PvE. And Combo Critical Chance. Dual wield skills have an increased critical hit chance. Not sure why you would take this. I guess in like a Pistol Whip spam build, it would be better than Side Strike. But if you are just spamming Pistol Whip, why not just take Side Strike and stand off to the side like you would with a Dagger build and get a better boost? I think they need to rework Combo Critical Chance a little bit better, because right now there's literally no reason to take it over Side Strike. Master level Sundering Strikes, this trait hasn't changed. It is really, really powerful for Thief and contributes quite a bit of vulnerability to the team. Sundering Strike's not going anywhere. A very powerful trait. Practice Tolerance. Before Sundering Strikes was at Adept, and Practice Tolerance was also at Adept, but since the Master traits before weren't so great for Critical Strikes, people would sometimes take Practice Tolerance. They buffed it a little bit to 10% from 7%, but I still think Sundering Strikes in PvE is a better trait. And then Ankle Shot. This is a main hand pistol boosting trait, so we can go ahead and discount that as not ever going to happen. Grandmaster, another pistol trait, Ricochet. That went from Trickery, I believe, and moved to Critical Strikes. Can safely ignore that. Hidden Killer, gain critical hit chance while in stealth, 100%. I mean, this will ensure that your backstabs always crit. However, you should always have 100% crit chance in PvE anyway, so I'm not entirely sold on Hidden Killer being the obvious choice here. And Invigorating Precision, you are healed for a percentage of outgoing critical hit damage, 15%. This is still a great trait. There's a couple encounters in the game where Invigorating Precision makes it basically God mode. It's very powerful. Does a Thief need Invigorating Precision? No. It's not a strict DPS gain. There are times where Hidden Killer is a DPS gain, so there are times where you might want Hidden Killer over Invigorating Precision. However, if you sometimes struggle with maintaining your Rune of the Scholar bonus, Invigorating Precision will very easily help you maintain your Scholar bonus. I like Invigorating Precision here, and I think that is still a really good trait. Alright, so Shadow Arts. They reworked this trait line quite a bit. They've made it a lot more defensive in nature. They removed functionality that PvE players really liked. Infusion of Shadow was very, very, very good in PvE. And so it's rather interesting that they got rid of that. And so now the usefulness of this trait line in PvE is drastically reduced. Let's go through it quickly anyway. Minor traits, Last Refuge just hasn't changed. Use Blinding Powder when your health reaches a certain threshold. Is what it is, not really a PvE thing. Stealth skills last longer. This is now the master level minor trait. That is the one trait that will make PvEers consider using this. There's certain times where that extra stealth duration matters in PvE. And so I could definitely see a thief retrading to this just for that trait for one particular encounter and then trading back to their normal build. So that is definitely an important trait, and it is worthwhile to be aware that it exists. And then Resilience of Shadow hasn't changed either. Adept level, Merciful Ambush, stealth yourself and target ally when reviving an ally. You revive allies faster. It's a new trait. I don't know. That's not going to see any PvE play. Concealed Defeat, create a smoke screen when down. Deception abilities recharge faster. I don't think that that's going to be that great in PvE. And then Shadow's Embrace, remove conditions periodically while in stealth. None of these traits are PvE based. I wouldn't even know what to suggest to take for PvE. Master level, Shadow Protector, that has not changed. Descent of Shadows, falling damage trait, also not the most amazing thing. And then Leeching Venoms, this is a merger of a couple different Venom traits. And since Venoms are such a huge hit in PvE, I can imagine that everyone will be clamoring to take this one. Oh, I was just joking about that. That'll never happen. Moving on to Grandmaster level, Cloaked in Shadow. Gaining stealth blinds nearby foes. I don't think we're going to see that get much use, because it doesn't currently get any use. New one, Shadow's Rejuvenation, regenerate health and initiative while in stealth. That's sort of like a merger, I believe, of two other traits. The two annoying traits that people always thought were sort of cheesy and annoying for Shadow Arch Thieves in World v World. Well, now they can take it. And then Venomous Aura, more Venom traits that no one will take in PvE. So this is a really quick trait line to dismiss. There's almost no PvE applications for it. And we can quickly move on to Acro. So Acro got a pretty big rework. There were definitely a lot of times where people in PvE, specifically for very difficult boss fights where they would have to dodge a lot, like Lupicus solos, would go into acrobatics for Feline Grace. But Feline Grace is majorly changed, as we'll see as we go through the minors here. At the minor level, or the adept level minor trait, Expeditious Dodge, that has not changed. Feline Grace, here's the rework. Gain 2 seconds of vigor on a 3-second internal cooldown when successfully evading an attack. That is a very different but important functionality change. It basically means it is in one sense good because it reinforces skill. Previously, Feline Grace gave you so many extra dodges that you could afford to, especially in conjunction with using Withdraw as your heal, that you could kind of waste dodges and not be punished for it. With this application of Feline Grace, you are rewarded for skillfully using your evasions. So I think Feline Grace, in one sense, it's better here. But as you can see, Vigor has been nerfed to 120% endurance regeneration. This is the other big problem. Vigor used to be 200% endurance regeneration. It used to be, I believe it increased your... Actually, no, I'm sorry. Vigor used to be 150% endurance regeneration. So Vigor used to be way better, and so the nerf to Vigor is a bit of a hit for other classes. However, as you can see at the Grandmaster minor level trait, Endless Stamina, the effects of Vigor on you are enhanced by 20%. So essentially, with Feline Grace and Endless Stamina, Thief will have the same Vigor that everyone used to have, almost. So Vigor nerfed across the board for every class. Thief with Acrobatics trait line will get somewhat similar functionality to Vigor before, but the change to Feline Grace is definitely overall a nerf. Don't make any mistake about that. At the Adept level, Fleet Shadow still exists. I don't know that anyone will be taking that outside of World v World. Vigorous Recovery, gain Vigor when using a heal skill. This hasn't changed, and it's very strong for all the same reasons that you would use Feline Grace, especially with Withdraw. As your heal, if you can evade an attack with Withdraw, you're going to get 7 seconds of Vigor, because these will stack, which is always nice. And then Pain Response. This is sort of the combination of a couple different traits previously. Not a combination, but they buffed this. It's a lot better of a trait now. It removes all the offensive sort of conditions instead of that will actually kill you, and it gives you regen. So it's a pretty decent trait for PvP or World v World or whatever, but Vigorous Recovery seems the way to go if you were going to go this way in PvE. The Master Level Guarded Initiation. Gain resistance when striking an enemy while your health is full 10 seconds. This is pretty cool. I could see this being a big deal for Pistol Dagger Thief. Sword Dagger probably gets hit a bit much, even in PvP, for that to be worthwhile, but PvE, not really much to fear from resistance at this point. I mean, there aren't really too many Condi bosses in the game yet. Who knows what HOT will have. So that's kind of minor for PvE. Swindler's Equilibrium. Successfully evading an attack while wielding a sword recharges steel by a static amount. I think I can tell a lot of PvPers are going to enjoy that trait. PvEers, no, that's probably... I mean, if you have to take something, that's okay in PvE, because a pistol whip build would be able to get quite a bit of use out of that, actually, and spam their steel a bit more often. Hard to catch, break stun and refill endurance while you were disabled. That's a pretty cool trait for PvP. I imagine that will see use in PvP, but it will not see use in PvE. At the Grandmaster level, Assassin's Reward hasn't changed. Quick Pockets haven't changed. And Don't Stop periodically. Evade projectiles while under the effects of swiftness. That's a pretty cool trait. I don't believe that we're going to see too much of that in PvE, but it's a pretty cool thing nonetheless. I could see for those difficult boss solos where you do go into aggro, especially if the boss has projectile attacks, that would be a pretty cool trait to take. Overall, nothing here that's going to boost our DPS, but if you're in the type of encounter or the type of group where you do need survival options, this trait line is going to make you very hard to kill, so long as you are able to dodge properly. Alright, so Trickery. Trickery was always awesome for Thief and PvE before. We never got to really go all the way to Grandmaster and get some access to some other of those traits, but now we do. So let's see what doors that opens up for us. The minor traits, Kleptomaniac Preparedness, and Lead Attacks, all three are great for the PvE Thief. Lead Attacks, the % damage increase per initiative that you have is really good. This is going to be at the very least a 6% increase, sometimes 15%. We're going to estimate probably around a 10% boost for the most part. The recharge reduction is basically giving us some of what used to be built into the Trickery line back. Great traits. All three of these are great. At the Adept level, Caltrops, we all know how annoying that is in World v World. Thrill of the Crime, we know how useful this can be in Pugs. A lot of Pugs aren't so good about stacking Perma-Fury for the group or Swiftness for trash runs. Having access to Thrill of the Crime lets a Pug Thief carry his group just a little bit harder. However, Flanking Strikes, they really did change the functionality of this. They sort of merged it with Critical Haste, which used to be a Critical Strikes trait. Basically, you gain quickness and lose all endurance and reduced endurance regeneration by 50%, but you gain quickness for 6 seconds, and it's a stun breaker. So we can imagine that most fights, you're going to proc this. It says gain haste when attacking foe from behind or the side. We can go ahead and imagine that if you start the fight with your dagger right behind a guy, right behind a boss, you're going to proc this almost immediately. Well, you will proc it on the very first hit. So you're going to get that nice boost of quickness. And the best part about quickness being a boon now is if someone else in your group is giving quickness, like the Guardian with his Tome, or the Mesmer or the Chronomancer with his Time Warp, it'll just all stack in duration, and you could definitely see upwards of 10 to 12, maybe 15 seconds of quickness at the start of every fight, which is going to vastly improve Thief DPS. Master level. Now these traits are a little bit less obvious in their PvE applications. Bountiful Theft. Stealing grants you and all nearby allies 10 seconds of vigor and rips boons from your target and grants them to nearby allies. Really, really, really good trait in PvP. actually really good in PvE. Giving party-wide 10 seconds of vigor is super strong. Hopefully, in Heart of Thorns, we see some very challenging group content, and that will enable Bountiful Theft to be a really big team support build. Being able to rip boons is going to help, because I imagine that enemies in Heart of Thorns that are tough are going to have boons, and ripping boons will be something that's valuable. And I imagine that the hard content in Heart of Thorns is going to require you to dodge a lot, and having vigor for your whole party is a really great addition. So yeah, I really am high on this trait now. I think it's going to be good. And there's other little niche times where it's going to come in handy, such as fights like Lupicus, where sometimes the Ellies will have to respec their build in order to bring vigor so that they can survive. Now, it won't be as easy for them to do that with this new system, so having Bountiful Theft kind of releases the pressure on the Ellies. Overall, I think this trait has great synergy and will be useful in PvE. Trickster reduces recharge on tricks. Tricks remove conditions. It depends what they classify as a trick. If Withdraw is classified as a trick, I could see Trickster being really, really powerful for particular boss solos. Getting 20 second cooldown reduction on Withdraw means you'll be able to use Withdraw very, very often. And being able to remove conditions when you do that is pretty cool too. Pressure Striking. Enemies you interrupt are inflicted with Torment. 3 stacks of Torment. So I don't know how useful this is going to be in PvE. I don't think it's going to be extremely useful, but we'll see. I don't know how viable it'll be in PvE. I think the best choice for us, for the most part, is going to be Bountiful Theft. Grandmaster. These traits are all the exact same. Hastened Replenishment. Receive initiative when using a heal skill. Sleight of Hand. Daze your target. Reduces the recharge of steel. And Bewildering Ambush. Stealing also applies confusion. My guess is in most cases in PvE, you're going to want to use Bewildering Ambush. You will generally not want to put Defiant stacks on a boss early in the fight with Sleight of Hand. Although you do really appreciate the functionality of the 20% steel reduction. So Sleight of Hand has pros and cons. Generally speaking, you want to steal early in the fight because it opens up Bountiful Theft. It gives poison to the boss, which gives you DPS boosts. Stealing early in the fight, very valuable in PvE for the thief. However, if it messes up the Ice Bow Deep Freeze and messes up your team's CC plans on the boss, Sleight of Hand can be a liability. So it's really up to you as a thief player to figure out what the situation's going to be. However, in the new Defiant system, when the break bar is introduced, Sleight of Hand will be perfectly fine, and I'll see Sleight of Hand. I probably predict that becoming the general overall meta trait. But for now, when you don't want to worry about messing up your team's rotations and CCs, Bewildering Ambush seems to be a pretty decent baseline trait to take. So that's Trickery. It's giving us quite a few more options that we never had before, like Bountiful Theft and Lead Attacks and even Preparedness. So these are all very beneficial boosts to the PvE Thief. And I'm going to wrap it up by showing what I think could be potentially the meta build. I think it's fairly obvious what the meta build will be. We'll see if you agree. Alright, so as you can see, I've titled this build the most obvious Thief build ever. It is Deadly Arts, Critical Strikes, and Trickery. As I said when I was going through the trait line, some of these things can change. Some of them are optional, like Invigorating Precision is not necessary. You can use Hidden Killer. Dagger Training, the functionality of that is likely to change. And Haste, sometimes you'll want to swap that out with Thrill of the Crime. Sleight of Hand, as I said, you'll probably want to swap that out as well from time to time, depending on your situation. But overall, I mean, this is a really obvious trait. We're getting all the best DPS increasing traits that you can get, just grabbing everything that helps with DPS, and also getting some pretty great utility and survivability. The survivability comes from Invigorating Precision and Bountiful Theft. Overall, it's, like I said, it's an obvious build. There's nothing in Shadow Arts that would compel us to go there. And I don't think Acrobatics is super necessary for a run-of-the-mill Thief build since there's no actual DPS increases. This is pretty hard to dispute that this is going to be the direction that we want to go in PvE. Afterwards, were I to change this around for a pistol whip sort of spamming build, there's a couple different directions you could go with it, but we'll see if that even becomes a worthwhile thing to do. But overall, this is, as I said, the most obvious Thief build ever, and if you disagree with me on any of these choices, I'm sure you'll let me know in the comments. Alright guys, so that's it. That is my quick overview of the Thief specialization changes for PvE. I think, as I said, what's good is fairly obvious. What's bad and the changes that are bad are fairly obvious, and there's really no, unlike Guardian, where there's a lot of things that could go either way, and it remains to be seen what the meta looks like. I think with Thief, it's pretty straightforward what it's gonna look, what a meta Thief is gonna look like in PvE. So overall, I think we are good to go with the Thief. And even though it's a little predictable and not particularly challenging to come up with a good build, I'm still excited to play it because it's a nice buff to Thief and should make a lot of quality of life improvements, along with having some good team buffing capabilities. So yeah, great. I am happy with the changes for Thief, and I think most Thief players are also going to be happy, unless you're the type of guy that really relied on Feline's Grace to survive, in which case you might not be as happy. But overall, good stuff. Thanks for watching.